This week in the world, Elon Musk is heading up a new government department, Sydney Sweeney is upset with the lack of support from females by females in Hollywood, and Alex Jones had his website sold in the best possible way. In our opening story of the day, imagine you're in a natural disaster, and the government agency whose job it is to help your relief discriminates against you because you're gay. Now imagine instead of them discriminating against you because of your sexuality, it was actually your political ideology. As it came to light recently that FEMA upper management instructed individuals on the ground not to help individuals waving Trump memorabilia or swag.
Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody is suing FEMA, accusing the agency of discriminating against hurricane victims who supported President-elect Trump,
even going as far to avoid houses displaying imagery in support of the president-elect. Due to further clarification, the supervisor in question, a Miss Marnie Washington, who was the one who gave the orders, claims the situation wasn't as cut as dry as it seemed, and those messages uncovered between the exchange of upper management and lower level workers were just quick internal shorthand. She also further stated that the instruction was intended to make workers aware of individuals within the area that were being more particularly hostile and urged them to use de-escalation skills. As of right now, we don't have any proof of Miss Washington's claims and are still working off the information we've already gathered. But that hasn't stopped Miss Washington from attempting to get official FEMA documents uncovered to support her side of events, even going as far to claim that the government agency is using her as a scapegoat, perhaps to earn political favor with the incoming commander-in-chief. But for now, she has been let go from her position effective immediately, though only time will tell whether or not she is actually telling the truth. Now, has this ever happened to you? Not the anime girl thing, but rather the getting hit by a car thing. The answer is probably yes if you're under the age of 8 and I happen to be driving in your area. But imagine instead of it being a really tall and handsome fellow, it was in fact an ambulance truck that knocked you over. Well, if you're William Hosch, a cyclist from Oregon, well, that might have just happened to you. As whilst the 78-year-old was enjoying a cycle around town, he was struck by a local ambulance. The biggest kicker of it, though, is the hospital that caused this accident and transported him in that very same ambulance, then charged him over $1,000 for his wee-woo ride. The exact details are that Mr. Hosch believed the medical truck would carry on straight, as he saw no indication from the vehicle. However, they did in fact turn heading into his path as he was pedaling forward, leaving both him and his cycle in a state of ruin, with the bicycle being written off and him himself receiving a few scrapes and bumps. He was quoted as saying, "Get a bill from the same ambulance that hit me, felt like I was getting hit twice," and as such is now hitting back with his own lawsuit, requesting just under $1 million for all of his injuries and future medical payments. I really hope this dude has kids, because if he's just being this greedy at his old age of nearly 80, that's shocking. You don't need this money. Pass it on to your kids. I'm really not sure how this will play in anybody's favor, or who is more likely to come out on top in the overall lawsuit, as it's damn near impossible to prove the cyclist claims, and it's damn near impossible to prove the ambulance claims. As with anything trending in geopolitics, the UK always follows suit, aside from the global legal weed trade, which they seem to have zero interest in engaging in. Instead, the government has decided to follow the topping yourself movement, as is the headline in many a debate in Canada and US, and whether or not our government should play a role in that choice. In the UK, this bill that's being introduced to Parliament is specifically relating to terminally ill adults with less than 6 months left to live. Known as the End of Life Bill, will be up for bare chats on the 26th of November of this month. Important to note, though, that this bill is basically less than an infant and more of a sperm pre-bust. It is entirely possible, with its current circumstances, that it's shut down at the gates before they even budge a little, as I imagine there will be argument after argument for years to come as to the ethical nature of this. If you were to ask me, I'm a huge believer in as little government interference from your day-to-day life as possible. So I do believe people should be allowed to make decisions relating to their own bodies, even going as far as to believe that vaccine should be optional. As in my personal belief, I'm sorry to say it, you can't say it's okay for some people to have the right to choose over their own body and others not to. What isn't up to the individual, however, is receiving a lick through your crack through the Nintendo Corporation, as a Twitch streamer by the name of Every Game Guru is fucked to be nice about it. A streamer who unfortunately was so small I legit can't even find a picture of their face or real name, pissed up the leg of the gaming giants by ignoring multiple cease and desists by the corporation to stop illegally streaming their intellectual property, as somehow he was getting access to unreleased content, and then playing that unreleased content to his live audience. Going off the info provided by GameRanks, the streamer had apparently pulled his stunt a total of 10 times, as well as going even as far to instruct his viewers on how to obtain this illegal material. Nintendo, for their part, wants $150K for each infringement and most likely will get it. It also seems that Every Game Guru has been nuked from the web, with all channels related to the streamer being private privated. In fairness to Nintendo, it does state in the article that they warned him 7 times, and he just kept doing it across multiple burner accounts. That's really on Homeboy at that point. We have Homeboys on the mind. The two Titus, Big D and Fat Musk, are currently planning a Washington takeover, as the future leader of the free world has appointed a government contractor with hundreds of conflicts of interest to a position of power. That position in Trump's cabinet is the head of DOGE. God, you suck. Which stands for Department of Government Efficiency. Musk, alongside his co-head Vivek Ramaswamy, will be tasked with cutting expenditure within Trump's new White House. The idea is to cut any and all bloat and unnecessary expenditure by surgically cutting it out with a knife, metaphorically speaking. Ironically, they're planning on doing this by creating a new government agency, the DOGE agency, which is just going to replace that government bloat. Well, that's nice. Hey, can you close the door as you go? Hi, whore. Aside from the reduction of budget spending, other tasks such as dismantling inflated bureaucracy, getting rid of pesky regulations that you know will almost certainly be those in the way of Mr. Musk and Mr. Ramos companies, and even restructuring federal agencies. The overall goal stated by the pair is to get rid of the over 400 departments within the government and get it down to a nice neat 99. I don't want to sound dramatic, but this is a little bit scary. Just a little. Do I think Trump will seize the US throne of power and reign over as a god king? No, but this is setting up the building blocks to do so. As it is, the Republican Party firmly control everything, even the House of Representatives, which allows them to pass laws in red favor with great ease. Not to mention, they also hold a majority of the Supreme Court, with only a few holdouts. In other words, Trump has a runway so long it touches tips with Africa, and probably can get almost every single one of his reforms through the House of Congress, basically unchallenged. Compounded with these changes he's making to government through DOGE, my man can practically frame the law in whatever way he wants. Again, I don't think he will do it, but an amendment could be made to term limits for the betterment of the people, at least from his perspective. Again, it's highly unlikely, but it is possible. Speaking of the Republican Party, one of their staunchest supporters has finally sold his business. Alex Jones, who of course famously was ordered by the courts to unload his assets, such as his world-famous show InfoWars, in order to pay back victims of Sandy Hook, whom he claimed were crisis actors, basically setting up an organized harassment campaign against the families who had already lost their children, was instructed by Texas judges to get rid of any of his major assets in order to pay back that $1 billion he owes. The lucky buyer of his show InfoWars was none other than the Onion News website, which is a comedy website which in general parodies modern day news sites. And I can't think of a better home for, Jones's baby. For the Onion's part, a spokesperson representing the company has stated, "We plan on making it very stupid and very funny," when referring to the website. And yeah, I'm just hyped for this, man. There's not much more meat on this bone, but I am very much looking forward to it. In not so funny news, the Church of England's head, Justin Wellerby, also known as his official title, the Archbishop of Canterbury, has resigned following a sex and physical abuse scandal that he himself actively covered up. John Smith, the offending senior church member, has been accused of abusing up to hundreds of young men and boys over the course of a decade, and possibly even longer, spanning Zimbabwe, the UK, and South Africa. I don't know what it is, dude, but whenever you hear your hometown mentioned in like a horrific news story, you still go, "Way." Smith, whose crimes were first reported back in the 80s, was actively protected by higher-ups within the church folds, like Mr. John Wembley himself. That's why the head of one of the world's biggest religious organizations is retiring after receiving permission from His Majesty King Charles III. Sadly, no victims of Smith will ever truly get justice, seeing as the man died in 2018, with his allegations only coming to full light only in 2017. However, hear me out, Welby's still alive? Maybe we could see what we could do against Lord Nonce Protector? Not that anybody ever will. This guy will definitely retire to a nice mansion and die of old age before opening his eyes in hell alongside Smith. Over in New Zealand, the country is facing its biggest ever crisis, when you consider the last one was a lack of flip-flops in stores. If you don't get the joke, I consider both New Zealand and Australia not real countries, as my mental image of those two lands is pretty much like a cartoon world. But to the residents of the All Blacks homeland feel very differently, seeing as their parliament was suspended last Thursday when a reform bill proposed by the Junior Act Party over the potential revising of the Waitangi Treaty, the document which acts pretty much as the same as America's Constitution, that was signed over hundreds of years ago between the native Maori people and the arriving European settlers, which outlined the rights of the first people in their own land. The proposed revisement would allow Parliament to change this ancient treaty, as some within the House believe that those rights protect and serve the Maori people far greater than other New Zealanders. As you can imagine, native representatives were not best pleased with this idea and broke out into a ceremonial haka in protest.
Pāti Māori, e ono ngā pōti e whakahe. Kawana, ka whakamanu whiriti a koe au, a kamate,
dance that is typically used in war times, but it's also used whenever they're about to be annihilated by the Springbok. In other words, the natives were indicating hostility towards the proposed changes. As of right now, hundreds of First People are marching towards the nation's capital of Wellington and are set to arrive in about 9 days, as speculated by political pundits. Those same pundits also stated it is very unlikely that this bill would pass anyway, but the native Maori still feel it's important to put the protest into effect to have their voices heard. And yeah, no dude, I'm firmly in the Maori's corner. You can't change the fundamental documentation of your country. Now, in news that is not really news but amuses me greatly, as I solve the puzzle of this story within the first line, Sydney Sweeney has stated that women in Hollywood don't support other women. This comes after a Hollywood producer by the name of Carol Bum, who was behind Buffy the Vampire Slayer the movie, not the show, said she didn't understand the hype behind the young actress, and even stated to her class at the University of Southern California, where she moonlights as a teacher, "Explain this to me, girls. She's not pretty, she can't act, why is she so hot?" Like, I don't have to say anything, I can just put these two pictures side by side. Dr. Giggle Touch. Please be for real, my love. This is typical woman-on-woman jealousy. Like, it is insane to say this woman is not attractive. She looks like something I would sketch in a notebook at 11. Ignore the wicked bitch of the West, honestly. Speaking of happiness, please be happy for me, as England has managed to claw their way back up to the top of their Nations League table. 3 Lions, who somehow managed the bizarre pattern of being runners-up in 2018, then got relegated in the Nations League, and then again became the runners-up in 2024's Euros, are set to make their return to the top flight of the Nations League competition, thanks to wonderful 3 goals against Greece. That allowed them to edge forward in goal difference. Both England and Greece are set to play their final games of this international run against Ireland and Finland, respectively, with the outcomes of both matches determining who gets a playoff position and who receives automatic promotion. Bear in mind, I believe England is ranked number 4 in the world in men's football, and are heavily favoured to win the World Cup coming up in 2026. It's just weird inconsistency that I'm pointing out. In our closing story of the day, the most popular tech YouTuber, Marques Brownlee, seems to carry on staining his pristine reputation. First with his wallpaper app that went down with his core fan base, as well as razor blades and ice cream, and now for his latest tech review video where he was filmed by himself on camera going over 95 miles per hour in a 55 zone. Critics already are not less pleased with the tech review basically acting as like a 10-minute ad for the camera he was stress testing, but they were even less pleased where in one of those stress tests within the video, he was very clearly speeding down the road at double the legal limit. For Brownlee's part, he has since rather genuinely apologized for his actions, acknowledging his faults and cutting the segment from the overall video. Look, say what you will about the video being like a paid advertisement, that's par for the course when it comes to successful YouTubers, but my man admitted his faults and nobody got hurt. And like I always say, everybody makes a mistake, so I'm willing to forgive the lad. With that all being said, that's the end of This Week in the World. A big thank you guys as always. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.